So I've already done a quick unboxing video with my initial thoughts on the AMS6 Headless Fan Fret Multi-Scale Electric Guitar from Artist Guitars. Now that I've had it for a few days, I can give you a more detailed opinion on what I think of this guitar. First and foremost, I noted that there was a slight intonation problem with this guitar. I quickly realized this is actually more than a slight intonation problem. You see, for 5 out of the 6 strings, I could just adjust the individual saddles and get the intonation pretty good. Now, all of the saddles are sitting pretty much as far back as they would go. The intonation was right. For the 3rd string, as far back as it could go was nowhere near far back enough. So what I had to do is unscrew the whole bridge, carefully move it backwards without putting it off kilter, drill some new holes and put it in a new position just a little bit further back. So now I've got it fixed. All of the strings are sitting right in the middle of their saddle range now, and they have good intonation, and the 3rd string is sitting right at the backmost limit of its intonation adjustment range, and that's pretty much good intonation on all 6 strings now. It is not ideal that an electric guitar should have this problem when you first buy it. I managed to fix it so it's not a problem at all for me, but no one else is going to want to do that on a guitar. So here you can see I took the bridge off, and you've got the ground wire sitting underneath the bridge, and the ground wire's job is to earth the bridge so that when you touch the strings the buzzing stops. At first I put the bridge all the way back here, and that turned out to be too far. So I've got an extra set of 4 holes that I didn't end up using. And then you see that hole in the middle on the left, that's where I ended up putting it. So now that the bridge is back on, you can see that little hole, that's the original hole poking out the edge of the bridge. And then on the other side of the bridge you can see that the plate is now hanging over the back of the guitar body just a little bit. I don't find this to be a problem because it's got that recess part in it and it works fine now. But you know, it's clearly an issue that the way they built the guitar, the bridge plate wasn't going to fit on there once you do this adjustment for the intonation. So now that the saddles are all back on there, you can see that all the saddles are pretty much aligned except the 3rd string, which has to be way back. The 3rd string is that green ball end string. You can see it's poking out now, and the back of the tuning machines, you see there's one sticking right out. The tuning machines on the AM6 are a lot better than on the older fan fret model that Artist Guitars used to do, but they discontinued it. That had really stiff tuning machines and it was really hard to tune. It would hurt my fingers just trying to turn them, but this is much better and it's quite good. Now let's look at the frets. As you can see, some of the upper frets have some pretty clear tool marks on them. You can see where they've been leveled out and they haven't been recrowned, so you've got a bit of a flat top on some of these upper frets. From playing it, I haven't found it to dull the tone like it can when the top of the fret is really flat, but because the frets weren't then polished after they leveled them out like this, there's a bit of a scratchy feeling when you do a bend. Now, as you can see, the 1st string is sitting a little bit loose in the saddle, so it can be moved around really easily with your finger, and it can also be moved around in that saddle slot when you strum the guitar, like when you hit the string. It doesn't sit perfectly in the middle of the saddle slot. You can also see that the paint underneath where the string sits has chipped away already. This reminds me of a lot of the guitar hardware that I've ordered on eBay, which is sort of Chinese metal and maybe a cheap paint job. You know, it gets tool marks on it immediately when you start unscrewing it or touching it with anything metal. So, you know, it's not ideal. It hasn't been a big problem when I play, but occasionally when you hit the string and it moves to a different spot in the saddle, the tone of it changes a little bit. So, you know, it's not ideal. This is one of those things, you can have a guitar that you keep at home and it can be a great little guitar for playing at home, and it can sound great, and everything about it is fine. But people would criticize it really heavily if you were playing live with it, because when you're live, you want the guitar to be perfect every time you pick it up. And little hardware problems like this that get in the way of a performance would be a real problem. Let's have a listen to what the guitar sounds like. Now, don't judge me that harshly, because this guitar feels really different to all my other guitars. So when I just pick it up and start playing something, I'm going to be crap. I mean, the action is lower than what I'm used to. The fanned frets are a little funny, and so you see me missing some bends and stuff. I suck on this guitar. But when I sit down for a couple of hours and play it, I get the hang of it. The fan frets actually aren't that extreme of a departure from a normal kind of guitar, so don't think that you'll never be able to play or that you have to relearn how to play the guitar. It feels pretty much like a normal guitar after you've been playing it for a little while, so don't worry too much about that. Anyway, here's some sounds. So here are my final thoughts on this guitar now that I've had it for a few weeks and I've been playing it a bit. The fan frets, you'll get used to them pretty quickly. It's not a radical departure from an ordinary sort of electric guitar. The first string has the Gibson style scale length being 24 3/4 inches, and the sixth string has the Fender style scale length being 25.5 inches. And what this does is it makes the higher strings a little slinkier, so you can do your bends, which you typically do on the higher strings more than the lower strings anyway. Whereas over on the sixth string, if you want to put it in drop D, you'll still have a fair bit of tension there, so it's not going to be floppy when you put it in drop D. The overall feel of this guitar, to me, it feels sort of like a Gibson, because I notice the looseness of the higher strings first before I notice the tightness of the sixth string. So if you like the feel of the 24 3/4 scale guitar, then you'd probably like this one. As for ease of playability, it's a pretty easy to play guitar. It's slightly different from other guitars, obviously, because you've got fanned frets, but it's nothing out of the ordinary. Palm muting is a little different because the bridge is on an angle. It's actually in the direction that your palm normally sits at, so you don't have to straighten your palm out to mute the strings. However, because of that issue with the third string and having to put the saddle way back, the third string saddle is sitting way back from the other ones. And so if you're muting the 6, 5, 4, and then you try to mute the third string, that third string is going to be way more muted than the other strings. Not a huge problem. You don't often mute the third string anyway, but if you wanted to, you might find it hard to mute everything equally all at the same time. Now, the body shape of this guitar is quite interesting. I would highly recommend you use a strap when you're playing it. You sort of get the best of both worlds with this body style because it's like you can sit down and have it pointing upwards like you would play a flying V, but you can also turn it around and sit it on your leg like you would with a Strat. Looking at the shape of this guitar body, you might expect it to be lighter than a normal guitar, but it's not. It's about normal to my feel. I haven't weighed it myself, but to me it feels pretty normal. But what isn't normal is the fact that it doesn't have a head, which is actually really cool because the weight of the guitar head is actually kind of annoying. You don't tend to notice it because it's always there, but as soon as you play a headless guitar, the neck doesn't have anything weighing it down. So, it feels comfortable when you put the strap on. It doesn't want to dive down at all. People complain about SG guitars because the head is heavier than the body and it wants to dive down. This is the absolute opposite to that. So if you like putting the strap on and hiking it up really high and pointing the head upwards, like I kind of do, this is pretty cool for that. And if you play guitar with the neck pointing upwards, like you would if you were playing a classical guitar, which a lot of progressive metal players like to do, well then this is really good for that because you can sit down and do that because of the shape of the body, and also if it's on a strap it will stay upright like that. So that's really cool. Now, because I had to move the bridge backwards, the end of the bridge protrudes off the back of the body a little bit, which means if you sit it on a guitar stand, it's possible that the string tuners can be poking into the ground or poking into the bottom of the guitar stand. So you've got to be careful about that. I would hope that if you ordered this guitar that it somehow wouldn't have that problem. Except when you consider the fact that the bridge is sitting right at the outer extremity of the body, how would they put the bridge in the right position to intonate the guitar properly if it's already as far back as it will go? And I had to put it over the edge to get it to intonate properly. It seems like a pretty major design flaw, and I would imagine they will never put the bridge over the edge out of the factory, even if the guitar body requires it. Maybe there's something about the way the neck was made that was imperfect in this guitar and isn't going to be a problem with other guitars. Like maybe the neck on this one is just sitting too deep into the neck pocket. Maybe this neck pocket was cut a little deep on the body. But to be honest, if someone else was buying this guitar, I would expect it to have the same problem. I wanted to give a glowing review of this guitar. What I can tell you about Artist guitars is that they have excellent customer service, and so if you wanted to take a chance on this guitar, you could order it, check the intonation as soon as it arrives. If you can't make the third string and all the other strings intonate properly by moving the saddles around, then let Artist Guitars know and they'll let you return it to them. And they do offer a change of mind return, so even if you can't convince them that there's a problem, they will still accept a change of mind return. In fact, I got this as a customer return guitar. It was put down as change of mind, and on the website it said they think the guitar's in pretty good condition. I wonder if the person returned it because the intonation was bad. I'm not 100% sure about this, but I think if you buy it as a customer returned model or as a factory second model, the returns policy may be different, so you might want to be careful about buying customer returned models or factory second models, just make sure if you buy this guitar that you have the full returns policy. I don't know if you have to still pay the postage when you return it for change of mind, but that's worth looking into before you buy this guitar if you really want it. Now, I will talk a little bit about Artist Guitars and my opinion about that company. I really, really like Artist Guitars. The reason why I really like them is because they offer a wide range of instruments, particularly electric guitars, at a much lower price than you would pay for a similar sort of thing with a different brand. I think they can do this because they get their guitars made in China and they do a quality control in Australia, and they can keep their costs very low. But you've got to think about what kind of guitar you're getting. I've found that the best guitars that I've gotten from Artist Guitars have been your standard sort of Tele, Strat, Les Paul, Dreadnought sort of guitars, the ones that are in high production. This is probably because the factories in China that make them have been doing it for a long time, and they've had the same issues come up, and they've figured out how to iron out the creases in their manufacturing. It could also be that the Australian quality control people are more familiar with these more common instruments. They know what things to look out for, and they can find problems more easily. My solid top Artist Guitars Dreadnought is perfectly fine, nothing wrong with it, even though it is a factory second model. My Artist Guitars Stratocaster has been pretty good. My Artist Guitars Tele with humbuckers, this is the old model, not what they make now. It's a really heavy guitar, but everything about it is solid, well put together, good action, pretty good frets, you know. But the instruments that I've gotten from Artist Guitars that haven't been as good have been either the really cheap ones or the ones that are a little bit unusual, like their lap steel guitar, which was strung with an ordinary set of 10 gauge electric guitar strings, even though it was a short scale instrument and it was just tuned in normal electric guitar tuning, which I don't really think should be the standard, but you know, that's what I got. The other thing about it was that at the tuning pegs, the strings were running against the wood going into the tuning peg slots. So there was like a clear design flaw in the way that instrument was made. But that instrument would be in much lower production than a Stratocaster type guitar. And the people doing quality control probably aren't as familiar with a lap steel guitar as they would be with a Stratocaster. So you've got to expect that the manufacturing and quality control will not be as good on something unusual or very, very cheap. Now, in my short video where I did an unboxing of this guitar, I said it's a buy, but I hadn't really looked at it very carefully when I said that, so I regret saying that, and I'm going to take that video down. It actually pains me to say this because of how much I love Artist Guitars, but I cannot recommend this guitar. I'm still going to play it, I'm still going to enjoy it, I'm not just going to try and get rid of it because it's a good guitar for me, but I can't recommend somebody else buying an instrument that I know has problems straight out of the box. And the upsides of this guitar, like the fact that it's really ergonomic to hold and stuff, those are good things about the guitar, but at the end of the day, you can get any of their other guitars with bullbucker pickups and it'll be just as good. The fan frets, in a way, it's kind of gimmicky. Like it doesn't make a huge difference to the way you play it, apart from that it feels a little bit unfamiliar when you pick it up. And it's a bit slinkier, but if you really like the 24 3/4 inch scale, but you don't want the 6th string to be flappy, you can just get a set of strings that are like heavy bottom and light top, you'll get the same feel out of it. So taking all of what I've just said into account, what would I recommend? Well, if you're looking for a cheap electric guitar from Artist Guitars, they have plenty of really good ones. I don't have the Grunge Master, but I've heard that it's really good. It's got really good reviews and it has P90 pickups. If you're looking for something with these same bullbucker pickups, there's the AP59 in Honeyburst. That's like a Les Paul style guitar. Or you can get the TC59, which I have the older version of it, and that has these same bullbucker pickups. Or you can get the Brown Burst 58 semi-hollow. I'm not sure that it has the same humbucker pickups, but it has humbuckers, and that's supposed to be a really good one as well, and all of these guitars are a lot cheaper. The fan fret thing really isn't that big of a deal. The only real upside I see with this guitar is that it's so comfortable and ergonomic to hold on to. So thanks for listening to this review. Catch you on the next one.